Hello students. So in continuation to the previous class, we will continue with the mechanical properties of materials. We have completed till malleability property in the previous class. So in continuation with that, the next property is called as toughness. Now toughness means it's a property of the material where it has to take sudden loads or shocks or impact loads. Okay, the load won't be applied very gradually or continuously. The load is applied suddenly, an impact or a shock. So if the material is able to withstand that load without fracture, then we call that material to be tough. Okay, so the application of this will be in areas where the material has to withstand these shocks or sudden loads. Okay, it can be in machinery parts, it can be in automobiles generally, where it has to a sudden impact or a sudden force has to be stopped without fracture. So that is the application of that. Okay, so by the definition it says it is a property of the material to resist fracture due to high impact loads like hammer blows. Okay, examples. The toughness of the material decreases when it is heated. Okay, so if the material is heated to a certain higher temperature and then if we have apply the force, then the strength of that material, the toughness of the material will be reduced. So it is measured by the amount of energy that a unit volume of the material is absorbed after being stressed up to a point of fracture. This property is desirable in parts subjected to shocks and impact. As I mentioned, the property is very much important where there is sudden loads or sudden shocks are being applied. Okay, so the next property is called as machinability. So what is machinability? It is the property of the material which refers to a relative ease with which a material can be cut. So that means how easy it is for a cutting tool or a device to cut the material. How easily the material can be cut. That property is called as machinability. In some cases, certain materials are very difficult to machine. Some materials, even though they have all good properties, they can be easily machined. What is required for us is, if we want to cut a particular material, it should be very easily possible to cut. So if it is allowing, if the tool is very easily able to cut the material, then that material is said to have good machinability. Okay, so it is generally measured with how easily a material can be cut. That means if we have two different materials and the tool is able to cut one material easily, that means there will be less wear and tear in that tool. So one more material, when that same tool has to cut, there will be more wear and tear. So that means the first material is having a better machinability compared to that of second one. Okay, so that is called as machinability property. So next, the last set of properties are resilience. Now what is resilience? Resilience is a property of a material to absorb energy to resist shock and impact loads. Okay, it is measured by the amount of energy absorbed per unit volume within the elastic limit. So this sounds similar to toughness, but toughness is the ability of the material to withstand fracture. That means without breaking. Resilience is the property of the material to absorb energy and resist shocks within the elastic limit. Okay, so these kind of things are usually usually required in the case of springs or suspension systems. Okay, because when the load is applied to that, it should be able to immediately take up the load and then release it. So that is the work of a spring material generally, isn't it? When there's a shocks or impacts, it has to absorb that load and then it has to release, and it has to be elastic in nature within the elastic limit. So that is called as resilience. Okay, next there is one more property that is called as fatigue. Now what is fatigue? So if you see the previous kind of loadings what I was telling you, suppose if the material is to be broken at a particular load, that means you are starting applying the load onto the material, and then at a particular load it is supposed to break. That is the maximum strength of the material, right? So let's say you are starting to apply tensile force onto that, and you are continuously applying force, and when the particular value is reached, at that value the material will break. That is its strength. The maximum strength, when it reaches, it will when it crosses, the load crosses that value, it will break. Now what do you mean by fatigue? Fatigue means the same material, if it is subjected to cyclic loading, that is continuously if it is applied for loading, then it might break much below than the actual value. Okay, so what is fatigue? Fatigue, when a material is subjected to repeated stress, it fails at a stress value much below the yield point value. Such type of failure in the material is called as fatigue. So if a material, instead of gradually applying the load and applying it, if you are cyclically continuously applying in the loads to that, then there is a possibility that the life of the material will be less, and that sort of failure is called as fatigue. And this particular fatigue becomes very much important in the materials which are generally used in machine parts or in automobile parts which are continuously rotating. So these things becomes important in the design of those materials like shaft or connecting rod, cranks, where they are continuously in motion. The loads are continuously acting on that, isn't it? Either it's a crankshaft or connecting rod, or the shafts which connects from one point to another, which will be continuously rotating. So in such cases, this fatigue becomes an important factor. Okay, last one is called as hardness. Now what is hardness? See, generally when we say hardness, stiffness, toughness, you may feel all the same, but now when you read the definition, you understand strength is different, stiffness is different, fatigue is different, toughness is different, and now hardness. Again, hardness is also different. So when we speak in general terms, we usually say the material is hard, the material is tough, or material is stiff. But each of them has different meaning, isn't it? Now we have gone through each of the definitions. You have come to know that toughness is something else, and ductility is something else, stiffness is something else. Now what is hardness? How do you define hardness? So hardness is basically a surface property of the material. Okay, so it is not dealing with the entire material. Actually, hardness basically deals with the surface of that particular material. That means whenever you are trying to apply load, usually a scratch or an indent or indentation or a mark, right? If it is resisting that scratch or indentation on the surface, then we call that material as hard material. Okay, so if the material withstands any scratches or any indentations on that, then on the surface, then it is said to be hard. So this is an example for what you say, your mobile phones you can have, isn't it? I'm just giving an example here. I'm trying to relate it so that we can understand the concept of hardness. So nowadays it comes with a very very much harder glass, right? We call the Gorilla Glass 5, 6, whatever. So what does it mean? That the surface of that material is harder. That means it is not so easy for it to be scratched or make an indent or a dot or impact on that. So that's what you mean by hardness. Doesn't mean that it will not break. It might break, but it is not so easy to make scratches on the surface. That is hard. Okay, so that is what you mean by hardness. So classification of ferrous and non-ferrous materials, we have already seen this, but this is put in the table. So on the left hand side we have ferrous materials, and on the right hand side we have non-ferrous materials. So under ferrous materials, what are the things we are going to study next? So first one is pig iron, wrought iron, then cast iron, and under cast iron they are categorized into 4 types, that is grey cast iron, white cast iron, malleable cast iron, and ductile cast iron. Then steels. So under steels we have low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, high carbon steel, alloy steels, tool steels, and stainless steels. Coming into non-ferrous metals, we have copper and alloys of copper, that is brass and bronze, aluminium and different alloys of aluminium, lead and different alloys of lead, nickel and its alloys. So we have to study both ferrous as well as non-ferrous materials. So first we'll start with the ferrous materials. Okay, so ferrous materials, as I've told you earlier, I'm just repeating it again. These are the materials which contain iron as the major constituent in this. So majority of this is iron, and then we have smaller additions which we have to see in how is it differentiating. The major component will always remain iron. Depending on what you are adding into that will make different forms of iron. Okay. So the principal raw materials for all the ferrous materials is pig iron, okay, which is basically obtained from smelting of iron ore with the coke and limestone in the furnace. Okay, so where do we get this pig iron? Basically, pig iron is actually got from the ores. I hope you know all these things, isn't it? You have studied this in your school, the different ores of iron. So which are the different ores of iron you have? You have magnetite, hematite, limonite and siderite. There are four variants of iron ores. So we get different ores in different places, right? We also get one in Kudremukh, which is very very much near to us, Kudremukh iron ore. So we get different forms of ores in different places. We extract from the ore, we extract iron. So what does magnetite means? Magnetite, the chemical formula is Fe2O3. Okay, it is generally black in color, and in this ore generally 72% of that iron is present. Similarly, we have hematite, which is Fe3O4, which is red in color and 70% of iron content in that. And limonite, FeCO3, brown in color, 60 to 65% of iron present in that. And siderite, Fe2O3 bracket H2O, brown in color, we have around 48% of iron. So these are the different four ores from which we can extract iron. And what do? We take this iron ore, we need a catalyst, we add a coke and limestone in this, and then we heat it in the furnace. And when we heat it in the furnace, the iron, the molten metal what we get is actually pig iron. Okay, so what we obtain from that is called as pig iron. Okay, so the first one, pig iron. So what is pig iron? As I've already told you, pig iron is a semi-finished ferrous metal produced in a blast furnace by smelting iron ore and coke combined with a flux like limestone. So when you add these iron ore with coke and limestone into that, then what you get is the pig iron. In the sketch here you can see, so you have the iron ore plus coke plus limestone, you get this pig iron. Okay, now this is what I have told you. Alright, so whenever you write in the examination, please make sure, I know it's going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy to remember each and everything, but at least try to remember the major constituents, what is the percentage of that. Okay, and then the properties and then the application. For example, you need to write, okay, what is pig iron, how is it obtained? I don't think it's going to be difficult for you to know. Pig iron is obtained by iron ore along with coke and limestone is smelted in a furnace, blast furnace. So you get the iron ore. Now what are the compositions of iron ore? It contains 92% of iron, 3.5 to 4.5% of carbon, 0.5 to 3% of silicon, 0.04 to 0.2% of sulfur, 0.5 to 2.5% of manganese, and 0.04% to 1% of phosphorus. Okay, I do understand that it's not possible for you to remember each of them, and pig iron is not the only one. You have so many other things: pig iron, cast iron, in that grey cast iron, white cast iron, malleable cast iron, wrought irons. So you need to remember a lot of compositions, but at least try to remember what is the major percentage, what is the iron percentage in that, and then just remember the names, if not the exact percentages. Okay, so you can generally write the compositions. It contains so and so percent of remaining things. Okay, properties, it's very hard and it's very brittle. Application, as you can see, pig iron doesn't have a specific application on its own, but pig iron will serve as a raw material for producing other types of irons. Okay, so pig iron itself is not generally used, but they are serving as a raw material to make into different others like wrought iron, cast iron and steel. They are all made from pig iron. Okay, so that is about pig iron. So next we will go to cast iron. Now cast iron is one of the important materials that is used in the mechanical field. There is a lot of uh, products that is made up of cast iron because of its different properties. Okay, so cast iron, it's a ferrous material that is produced when pig iron is remelted in a cupola furnace and poured it into molds in order to make castings. Okay, now what do you mean by this term casting? So casting is a process of producing a component, a part, by melting the base metal, melting the pig iron in this case. And when the pig iron is melted completely and becomes into liquid form, they are poured into some cavity. And when it is cooled, it will take the shape of the cavity and that becomes a product. And that is how cast iron is obtained. So that process is called as casting. Okay, and cast iron also gets its name because of this process of which it is produced. Understand? Cast iron is generally produced by the process of casting, and that is why the name of this iron is called as cast iron. Okay, because it is made by casting. So what are the composition of this cast iron now? So it also contains 90 to 92% of iron, 2 to 4.5% of carbon, 1 to 3% of silicon, and very small amount of sulfur, manganese, and phosphorus. Almost similar things what was there in pig iron, because you're not doing anything great here. You're only remelting pig iron, and then you are pouring into mold. Okay, so what are the properties of this? So it's very hard. That's important property. It's very hard. It's brittle in nature. I have explained this, isn't it? When I was saying ductility and all. This is brittle. Brittle. It has a very low melting point. It has got good fluidity. That is why it will be able to cast easily. It's got a very good fluidity. It can flow very easily, and it can be made into any cast. Okay, good machinability, and is also wear resistant. So these are the properties of that. So next, let us see some of the applications of cast iron. So as you can see, so many in the sketches, applications include brake disc, metal work vise, cylinders, gearbox cases, machine parts, which are generally not subjected to tension and shocks, because it is brittle in nature and it is not having good resilience and toughness. So you can see some of the components, the disc brakes, the engine blocks inside which the piston cylinders are placed, the vises. What do you mean by this vise? Vise is used to hold the workpiece when you are doing some operations on that. That is when you want to cut a metal part, or when you want to do filing on that to remove the top surface. Then you will fix that workpiece on a device, work holding device, that is called as a vise. Okay, so apart from this, it is also used in casing of gearbox as shown in the figure. Okay, so next is wrought iron. Okay, so it is produced from pig iron again by burning carbon, silicon, manganese, phosphorus, and sulfur inside a puddling furnace. Okay, so you are varying the percentage of the iron and carbon and other things, so that you get a different form of iron. Basically they're all same, but because you're changing the small amount of materials into that, their properties will change. If depending on the change in properties, their application will change. Okay, so the composition of this contains 99.8% of iron, so majority of that is only iron, and carbon content ranging from 0.05 to 0.25, 0.12% of silicon, 0.01% of sulfur, 0.02% of phosphorus, and slag of 0.07%. So you can see 99.8% is basically iron and a very small amount of other materials. Okay, properties. So they are soft, it's ductile compared to cast iron, it has high toughness, it has better tensile strength, it has good machinability, good corrosion resistance, high melting point, and good weldability. Okay, So the applications, so it is the wrought iron is basically used in making pipes, water pipes as well as steam pipes, in making bars in the sense we call the metal rods, we call that as bars. So if it is usually circular in cross section, we call it as shafts, and if it is of any other cross section, generally rectangular cross section or square cross section, we generally call them as bars. Okay, then it is used in making engine bolts, rivets, railway couplings, etc. And also another important applications, as you can see, they are also used for making iron bars, grills in for windows, balconies, fences, gates, etc. And also used in crane hooks and chains. Okay, so all those sketches have been put here. Even in the next slide you can see all those whatever I've told. So engine bolts, right? So engine bolts are done in wrought iron. Rivets. In the next slide we can also see the railway coupling here. So this is called as railway coupling. Coupling is connecting between two bogies from one to another. That's a coupling. Then in boiler tubes, then also crane hooks. So these are the different applications of wrought irons, where wrought iron can be used. Okay, so these are some of the examples again, as I told you earlier. So you can see the fences and staircases and balconies, grills, they're all using wrought irons. Okay, so next one, in cast iron itself is grey cast iron. Okay, so what is this grey cast iron? Why is it called grey cast iron? Because of its microstructure. If you see the microstructure, there is a graphite flakes present in this cast iron which are greyish in color, and that is why it's called as grey cast iron. So you can see this in the sketch here. If I zoom it, so you can see this is the microstructure of the grey cast iron. So it contains these graphite flakes which are greyish in color, right? And that is why the name is given as grey cast iron. Okay, so its fractioned surface looks or appears grey due to the presence of graphite flakes. I've already told that. The composition includes 2 to 5% of carbon, 1.3 to 2.3% of silicon, 6 to 10% of graphite, and a small amount of sulfur, phosphorus, manganese, and the rest of them is all iron. So again, obviously the major part is iron. Then a very small amount of 2.5 to 4% of carbon, 1.3 to 2.3% of silicon, then 6 to 10% of the graphite, and very small amount, negligible quantities of sulfur, phosphorus, and manganese are added. Now the properties includes it's having very high fluidity, high compressive strength, excellent castability, its wear resistance, brittle, and easily machinable. Okay, so these are the properties. It's highly fluidity, good compression strength, good castability, it's wear resistant, more brittle, and easily machinable. So applications. So applications of grey cast iron includes manufacturing of piston rings. Okay, in IC engines, when we did that, I did mention about what you mean by piston rings, why it is required. So that piston rings are usually made up of grey cast iron. Cylinders and cylinder blocks, clutch plates, brake drum, gear and housing of gearbox, pump housing, all these parts are usually made up of grey cast iron. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the sketches related to that: gearbox casing, gears, etc. Piston rings, as I've told you, so you can see it in the sketch there. So these are the piston rings which will be placed on the outer periphery of the piston. Next one is white cast iron. So white cast iron, again, it's because of the microstructure only, because of the presence of cementite. You can see the microstructure is on the left side, and it's shown in further enlarged in the right side. There is something called as pearlite and cementite. I don't want to explain what pearlite and cementite and all those things, because that's a whole new subject itself. Okay, so what generally happens is when we heat the metal, okay, any particular metal to a certain higher temperature, let's say around 900 or 1000 degrees Celsius, what happens is their microstructure will change. Okay, so you have gray cast iron or any other cast iron, for example, and then you you heat it to a certain higher temperature, let's say around 1000 degrees, and you keep that at that particular temperature for a long time, and then you cool it slowly or cool it fast. There is a different procedure for doing that. So when we do that, the microstructure of the materials will change, and when the microstructure changes, the properties will change. So this is one such example that they've shown here. We're trying to heat the material and their microstructure changes, and there is a formation of something called as pearlite and cementite in that. Because of that, it becomes whitish in color, and because of that, its properties will change. Because its properties will change, its application also will change. Okay. So properties, composition includes 1.8 to 3.6% of carbon, 0.5 to 2% of silicon, along with small amount of sulfur, phosphorus and manganese. Properties, they are hard and brittle, they are highly wear resistant, high compressive strength, but machinability is poor. Applications, it's used for making dining tables, rollers of rolling mills, rims of the car wheel, etc. Okay, so this is one of the examples. As it is told, it's used in making dining tables. So you can see these white color table as well as these chairs are made up of white cast iron. Okay, so next one, in cast iron itself we had grey cast iron, white cast iron. Now we are studying malleable cast iron. So it is also produced by heat treatment of white cast iron. So I just explained what is heat treatment. So heat treatment is basically a process where you heat the material to very high temperature and retain that at that temperature for some period of time, and because of this process, the structure or the microstructure of the material will change, and then different type of microstructure will come, resulting in change in its properties. Okay, so it is produced by heat treatment of white cast iron. The composition includes 2 to 3% of carbon, 0.6 to 1.3% of silicon, sulfur, manganese, phosphorus in small amounts. So if you can observe, in most of the ferrous materials, the components remains the same, right? It will have iron, it will have carbon, it will have sulfur, it will have phosphorus, it will have manganese. So you can write the same, you can keep an idea of these materials, and you can almost write the same things. Okay. Properties, it is ductile, it is shock resistant and can be easily machined, and it is highly malleable, of course, because the name itself is malleable cast iron, it has to be malleable. Application includes manufacturing of automotive components such as crankshafts and transmission gears. Okay, so again we can just go through the microstructure here. So the microstructure of malleable cast iron will look like this. It will have another two components called as pearlite and ferrite, and you can see this structure like this. And don't worry, you need not really draw these structures. They will not ask you to draw the microstructure of that. I am just trying to explain these things because everything looks similar, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you just say the name white cast iron, grey cast iron, malleable cast iron, you may think why these different names are there. They are literally different materials. That's why I am showing you the microstructure and telling you the difference. There are difference in microstructures, saying that even though they are called cast irons only, malleable cast iron has its own properties, grey cast iron has its own property, white cast iron has its own properties. So as you can see, it's written over here. So this is obtained actually by heating white cast iron at a temperature of 800 degrees to 900 degrees, and it is kept for 50 hours in that atmosphere, and which causes the decomposition of cementite, forming graphite in the form of clusters surrounded by ferrite or pearlite matrix depending upon the cooling rate. So that process is called as heat treatment. Anyways, you need not go very deep into that, but I'm just telling you because I have explained heat treatment, isn't it? So you heat it to a very high temperature, you keep it at that particular point for a longer period of time, and again it depends on how you cool it. If you cool it very slow, the properties will change. If you cool it fast, the properties will change again. Okay, so we have completed one part, that is cast iron and different types of ions. Now in the ferrous material itself, another important material, that is steel. Okay, so varieties of steels, there are varieties of steels. There are low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, high carbon steel, tool steels, alloy steels, and stainless steel, which I think you know, it's most commonly used in utensils, stainless steels. Okay, so steel. So steel is basically an alloy of iron and carbon. So when you have iron and carbon in different ratios, you get different types of steels. So if the carbon content is less than 2%, and then very small amount of alloying elements such as sulfur, phosphorus, manganese, nickel, copper, etc. are used. Okay. Now first one in steels, first one we have low carbon steel. Now what is low carbon steel? The other name for that, and a very common name for that, is mild steel, MS. Most of the materials that we use in mechanical components are mild steel or low carbon steel. Composition. So it contains iron and a very low, as the name itself says, low carbon steel. So it contains 1.16 to 0.18% of carbon, 0.4% of silicon, and small amount of sulfur, phosphorus, and manganese. Properties: it is having a very good machinability, good formability, it's malleable, ductile, it has good toughness and good weldability. Applications: manufacturing of gears, screws, nails, rivets, nuts, pins, shaft, and name anything. Most of the components are all made up of mild steels only. So gears, screws, nails, rivets, nuts, pins, shaft, and even more other components, most of them are made up of mild steel. Okay, so next one is medium carbon steel. So medium carbon steel means the carbon percentage is slightly higher than that of low carbon steel. So here iron plus 0.25% to 0.59% of carbon. The properties are good wear resistance, high tensile strength, but less ductility. Applications: it is used in making forging, appliances, manufacturing of automotive and other machine components like crankshafts, axles, springs, forging dies, rotor shafts, keys, hand tools, spindles, etc. Okay, I expect you to know some of these machine parts also, because it is not possible for us to explain what you mean by forging dies, what you mean by hand tools or spindles or rotor shafts. Okay, so I hope you should know all these machine parts. You know crankshafts for sure, you know what is axle, you know what is springs, you know what is bolt, isn't it? And some other machine components these are. Okay, so you can see the picture of a crankshaft here. So this is a sketch of the crankshaft, which is usually made by medium carbon steel. Okay, next one we have, see, three types of steels here: low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, and high carbon steel. So as you can see the composition, this should have maximum carbon percent out of the three. Low carbon steel is 0.16 to 0.2, then we have 0.2 to 0.5 medium carbon steel. Now we have 0.6 to 1% of carbon, and rest of all are iron. So properties: they possess high hardness and wear resistance. Ductility is less than medium carbon steel. Application: they are used in making most of the tools, actually, high carbon steels. Okay, so low carbon steel are generally work pieces, the metals that we use, and high carbon steels are usually most of the tools. For example, they are used in making hammers, screws, hacksaw blades, leaf springs, etc. Okay, so some of the sketches are put below. Okay, that is only for your reference to see what those are, but you need to write, if at all the example has, write a note on steels. You will have to write what are steels, what are the three types in that: low carbon, medium carbon, high carbon steels, write the percentage of carbon, write some properties and their applications. So continuing with this, next one is alloy steels. Now why it is alloy? Because they are not only having carbon and iron in them. If they only have carbon and iron, we call that as carbon steel, that is low carbon steel, medium carbon steel and high carbon steel. Now when you have some other materials alloyed along with these things, we call that as alloy steels. So steels which have other elements other than carbon to provide a specific characteristics are called as alloy steels. So their composition includes alloying elements such as nickel, chromium, molybdenum, magnesium, silicon, etc. Properties: they have excellent strength, corrosion resistance, high hardness and wear resistance. Application involves manufacturing of aircraft, undercarriage parts, punches, dies and heavy gear containers. So the sketches of punches are here and dies are over here. Okay, so anyways, you need not draw these sketches. I've told you, I just wanted to show you these sketches so that you know what you mean by punches and what you mean by dies. So that's about alloy steels. And then we have stainless steels. I think most of you are aware of this material because this has a lot of applications in domestic as well as outside. So steels which do not easily stained and are resistant to rusting and corrosion are called as stainless steel. Right, that's one beautiful part of stainless steel. They don't rust so easily and they will not have any stains on them. That's why it's called as stainless steels. They shine. Right, so most of the utensils what we have are done using stainless steels. Apart from that, they also have some other applications in medical field. Most of the tools what they use are all made up of stainless steels. Okay, so the composition include iron carbon alloy with chromium, which is the important alloying element here for stainless steel, with chromium content varying from 11.5% to 25%. In addition to chromium, there are other alloying elements such as aluminum, copper and silicon. Okay, so from a stainless steel, the major alloying element is chromium. Properties: high strength and toughness, corrosive resistance, easy machinability. Applications: you can generally write anything. Manufacturing of kitchen sinks, food processing equipments, surgical equipments, dental equipments, knives, blades are all usually made up of stainless steels. Okay, so we'll go to the next one, that is tool steel. So tool steels are the special steels with carbon content in the range of 0.8 to 1.2%. So tool steel, as the name itself indicates, are used for making tools. Okay, so the composition it contains 0.7 to 0.8% of carbon, 12 to 20% of tungsten, 3 to 5% of chromium, 1 to 2% of vanadium and 5 to 10% of cobalt. So you can see there are significant alloys here which is added to this iron and carbon. Apart from iron and carbon, there is tungsten, chromium, vanadium and cobalt added to that. So the major purpose of this particular material is to make tools. Okay, they are not used as any products or any materials. They are usually used as tools to cut other materials. That's why the name itself is called as tool steels. And one of the most important steels is tool steel that is used in mechanical field is called as HSS, that is high speed steels. Okay, so the property: they are very hard, very good wear resistant and also good abrasion resistant. Okay, it is used for very high speed applications, used for making tools and dies. So high speed steels, that's a very common tool that we are using, that's called as high speed steels. So they are used for cutting materials which are rotating or rotating at very high speeds. Okay, so in steel again we had different varieties. We had studied mainly iron and carbon content. We had low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, high carbon steel. Then we had alloy steels, then we had stainless steel, and then we have tool steels. So all these materials are the part of ferrous materials. So we had a lot of ferrous material to study. We began with pig iron, then we had wrought iron, then cast iron. In cast iron we had grey cast iron, malleable cast iron, ductile cast iron. Right. After cast irons, we also studied wrought iron. Then we had steels. In steels, again, we have different types of steels we have studied, and we have finished with tool steels. So that completes ferrous materials here. So I will stop at this point of this class. So in the next class onwards, we will start with non-ferrous materials. Okay. So I hope you have understood whatever I have done it till here. So please go through this once. I know there's a lot of theory involved in this. There is nothing much that we could explain here, but you need to study some of the important materials and their properties and its applications. Okay, thank you. So we'll continue non-ferrous materials in the next class.